Did you ever look at society and wonder how God could tolerate all this? How could he tolerate all this wrong? And how long will this go on? When will it end? Well, the prophet Habakkuk asked all these questions, and he got an answer. But the answer shook him a little bit. Welcome to the Great Outdoor Bible Adventure. All right, let's start reading Habakkuk chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, the oracle that Habakkuk the prophet received. How long, O Lord? There's our first question. How long must I call for help, but you do not listen? I cry out to you violence, but you do not save. These aren't personal problems here. He's crying out for society, what he sees in society. Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrong? Destruction and violence are before me, and there is strife and conflict abounds. Let's look at these verses here. How long and why? Verse 1, the oracle that the Habakkuk the prophet received, the King James, says the burden which Habakkuk did see. He was burdened because of his society. And he saw this. Did he see it just in his spirit, or did he have a vision? Don't know. What did he see? What did he see in society? Dog gets me all wet. He saw violence twice in these three verses. In the King James and the prophet Habakkuk, the word violence occurs 6 times. He saw injustice. He saw wrong. He saw destruction. He said that strife and conflict abounds. And then Habakkuk makes this amazing statement in verse 4. Therefore the law is paralyzed. Seems like there is no law. Justice never prevails. The wicked hem in the righteous, so that justice is perverted. I'll tell you what, I read this chapter, I feel like I'm reading the news today. I mean, the law being paralyzed. What's he talking about there? He's talking about the Bible. He's talking about the law of Moses, Old Testament. The New American Standard capitalizes the word law to denote that it's the law of Moses. And you look at our society, and the Bible, I mean, biblical norms and values seem to be paralyzed. And the righteous, the wicked hem in the righteous. I mean, you stand up for Christian morals and values and you're canceled. Habakkuk, it's as real today as it was 600 years before the time of Christ. Habakkuk sees all this and he asks how long. Well, he didn't ask how long because he lacked faith. He asked how long because he was a man of faith. Way back in Exodus chapter 16 and verse 28, and again in Numbers 14 and 11, God asks, how long? In Matthew 17:17, Jesus asked, how long? So, do I have to put up with this sinful generation? The martyrs underneath the throne in Revelation chapter 6 and verse 10 ask, how long? Well, Habakkuk got his answer. In Habakkuk chapter 1, verses 5 and 6, God tells him, look at the nations and watch. Watch. Be utterly amazed, for I am going to do something in your days that you would not believe, even if you were told. I am raising up the Babylonians, a ruthless and impetuous people who will sweep across the whole earth and seize dwelling places not their own. Verse 7, they are a law unto themselves. Verse 11, guilty men, and whose strength is their God. I mean, they worship themselves. They were a law unto themselves. I like the New American Standard Version of verse 5. Look at the nations, exclamation point. Watch, exclamation point. Be horrified, exclamation point. Be frightened, speechless, exclamation point. The Babylonians are coming. In the book of Revelation, chapter 18, the kingdom of Antichrist is called Babylon the Great. Revelation 18:2, with a mighty voice he shouted, "Fallen! Fallen is Babylon the Great." He's talking about the kingdom of Antichrist. The Babylonian Empire in Habakkuk 1, which is going to sweep over and destroy everybody, is a template for the kingdom of Antichrist. Now, the judgment of the Babylonians, the fact that the Babylonians are coming to destroy Israel, the nation of Judah, sort of shocks Habakkuk. And now his question is a little different. He basically says the Babylonians are worse than we are. It's almost as if to say the cure is worse than the disease. So says Habakkuk. And he says this in chapter 1, verse 13. Why do you tolerate the treacherous? Now he's talking about the Babylonians. Why are you silent when the wicked swallow up those more righteous than themselves? He realizes this judgment is going to be bad. And all of a sudden the question, how long, you start to understand, I see why it takes such a long time. Why do you tolerate injustice? I see why. Do you remember back in Genesis 18 when Abram was praying for Sodom and God said, if I find 10 righteous people, I'll spare the whole city. Reminds me of the parable that Jesus spoke in Matthew 13, verses 24 through 30. It talks about a field where the farmer sowed his crops. But at night, an enemy came along and sowed weeds among the crops. And in the parable, the owner of the field is God, and the crops are the righteous. The weeds are the wicked, and the enemy is Satan. The angels ask the master, God, do you want us to go out and pull up the weeds? And the master says, no, don't do that, because in pulling up the weeds, you'll pull up the wheat. The righteous will suffer. And then God says, let them both grow until the judgment day, and then we'll separate them out. Wrapping up this video, I want to go back to a couple verses. In verse 4, where it says, the wicked hem in the righteous, so justice is perverted. Remember how that verse started, the law is paralyzed. At the time of Christ, actually, they started before the time of Christ, there was a group of Jews called the Essenes, and they established a community. They called it the Qumran community, wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls. They viewed Jewish society as being hopelessly corrupt. And they wrote a commentary on Habakkuk 1. And where it says the wicked hem in the righteous, they viewed it as wicked priests in Jerusalem, hemming in the righteous. And the Babylonian invasion, they interpreted in their own times, prophetic of the Roman destruction of Jerusalem, and they were right. What's my point? Habakkuk 1 is a passage for all times. It was for Habakkuk's time. It was for the Jesus time, the Qumran community. And it's for our time. I'm going to read verse 5 in closing. I'm going to read it out of the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament. Dates a couple hundred years before Christ. Look, you who are despisers, and observe and marvel at the wonders, and be destroyed. They despised the Bible, the law of Moses. They despised any thought of judgment to come. The Apostle Paul quoted the Septuagint in Acts chapter 13 and verse 41 for those who despise the Savior, Jesus Christ. You look at Habakkuk and Acts together, and don't we live in this time? People despise the Bible. They despise God's commands. They scoff at anything having to do with judgment or, God forbid, eternal hell. They scoff at the idea that you have to accept Jesus as your Savior to be saved. Is Habakkuk for our times? You bet he is. You bet it is. This concludes, come here, Zeke, come here, boy. This concludes this episode of the Great Outdoor Bible Adventure. This is my dog, Zeke. He's 16 months old. And boy, he is sniffing at my microphone. He is lean and strong and quite the hunter. already in 16 months. Going to put up a couple videos. Not going to be related to this subject, though. They're going to be on marriage, how to improve your marriage, how to assess your marriage, how much control does God have in your marriage, how God can make it better. God bless you. You have a great day.